examples you showed, this was not opera singing, this was not bel canto. And therefore, maybe one has to take into account, additional to the question of the intervals, the way these intervals are actually produced in the vocal tract.
You know, it's a very, very interesting and important detail. Probably I should have mentioned even before. In almost all the cultures that these dissonants are, that are based on seconds, they are singing very loud, piercingly loud. The louder they sing, better. When swans compete sometimes with each other in singing, they try to sing as loud as possible, and they try to overdo each other by singing louder and singing longer in a loud way. Edisher described once he was present at a competition of different swan singers when they started competing with each other who could sing it better. Now, the better singing in Gurial could be a different thing, possibly making some more subtle movements and some tonal changes. But swan singers were just showing their powerful singing, their guts to keep up, doing very loud and very strong singing. And they went on singing until one of the singers in one of the groups completely lost his voice and lost. So yes, in the dissonant, in secondal singing, it's usually very loud singing. You probably even remember, I remember Thomas was sometimes telling me that as music teachers, they want to explain to students the principle of dissonance and consonance. You know, they play dissonant very loud, da 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 da. What is it? Da, and then play third very gently, to show that this is something gentler, more agreeable, nice music. And dissonance. Okay, what is this? What is this? And what is this? Oh, this is 6. Nice. What is this? That's 7. Oh, that's dissonant. So somehow it is connected to us more gutsy, more reverberating music played louder. Very, very, very important detail there. Okay.
An improvizacja თქვა, an remix. ხო? აი ეს ხო happy birthday არის, ნუ სოფლიოში ცნობილი სიმღერა. მე თუ იმაზე რაღაცას გავუკეთებ, არის უკვე რემიქსია რა. და მე შემიძლია ამ რაღაცა სხვა ეხლა მაგალითია თქვა, თორე ისე რატომ დავიღო დაუშვა. ავიღებ რაღაცას და არ იქნება რემიქსი. მე არ არის სწორი, რავი, რემიქსი, იმიტომ რომ დაწერილი კომპოზიტორი მართალია შეიძლება 900 წელს იყოს და პოპულარული იყოს რაღაც რემიქსით, მაგრამ ფიქრობ, რომ მე მაინც სხვა უნდა ავიღო. მაგრამ ეს მაგალითი.
მე შეიძლება პერსონალურად არ გაიეს, მაგალითად დათო და მისი დარონგეროდა სეკუნდებში რაღაც მელოდია სეკუნდებში არ დაწერილა და დათო და მისი დაიმიტომ ვეროდა სეკუნდებში რომ სიამოვნებდა სეკუნდებში სიმღერა. აი ამაზე ნაცნობია. Improvizacja che è tecnico di შექმნა იმისათვის რომ ეს სეკუნდები მოისმინო. იმიტომ რომ ეხლა უნდა გითხრათ რომ ძალიან საინტერესო რამითხრა ვიქტორ ვინოგრადოვმა. ის იყო ცენტრალურ აზიაში უყვებოდა და მასწავლებელმა უთხრა რომ გამოდით რომ გიჩვენებთ და არაჩვეულებრივ რაღაცა გიჩვენებთ და ჩემს სტუდენტებს რა შეუძლია. და რა შეიძლება მათ მაგალითად მისცემ და ბახის რომელიმე საკმაოდ რთულ თემას. და მე ამ სწორდა სტუდენტებს ერთად დარარამ და მეურსი და ზუსტად დიდით ერთით დაშორებით ისინი თავიდან ბოლომდე სწორდნენ ამას ყოველ პრობლემის გარეშე. ანდა გეროდენ კვარტებში, ანდა გეროდენ სეკუნდებში. ესე იგი მათ არავით არის პრობლემა ასე ინტერვალებში, ზუსტ ინტერვალებში დათვით სიმღერაში არ ჰქონდათ. ეს ამის მიზეზი ის კი არის, რომ მათ ძალიან კარგი ჰარმონიული სმენა აქვთ. პირიქით, მათთვის ჰარმონიული სმენა იმდენად ტრადიციას მოცილებული არის, რომ მათთვის სიმღერა თავისთავადობაში ისო სხვადასხვაის მაინც და მას ყურადღება არ ექცევა, ძალიან ადვილი იყო. ესე იგი ამიტომ მარიუ შნაიდერს რო ჰქონდა გამოყოფილი პარალელური მრავალხმიანობის ორი სხვადასხვა ტიპი. ერთი იყო tonalurad გაუცნობიერებელი მრავალხმიანობა, მეორე ტონალურად გაცნობიერებული მრავალხმიანობა. tonalurad გაუცნობიერებელი მრავალხმიანობა არის, როდესაც ერთ და იგივე ინტერვალი ყოველთვის დაცული არის სუბტად. კონტექსტია ამ გვარდა ყოველთვის დაცული არის. ხოლო ტონალურად გაცნობიერებული არის მრავალხმიანი, როდესაც ეს ინტერვალი იცვლება, იმიტომ რომ ისინი ორივე დაკავშირებული არიან ერთ ტონალობასთან. ესე იგი ამ შემთხვევაში ცენტრალურ აზიაში ვინაგვადობს პროექტის სტუდენტები მღეროდნენ ტონალურად გაუცნობიერებელ მრავალხმიანობას. გაუცნობიერებელი მრავალხმიანობა თავისთავად მრავალხმიანობა არ არის. ეს უფრო შემთხვევასთან რაღაც გარეგნულ ფაქტორებს უნდა დაბრალდეს. I'm interested to hear what our dear Anna can say about our discussion, because you've dealt with the traditions in Albania and Greece which have dissonance, and so what would be your perspective on our discussion?
Tell the truth, I'm not happy at all with dissonance. The word dissonance is just sounds
secondary.
Everything should be more
or circumstantial.
The earth, yes.
Yeah.
With the second is much better, I think. This connotation of dissonance and consonance, as you described, you know, is just, you know. Yes. And what else was? Yes, some of the terms should be reviewed, and especially, I would say, for Georgian music, you have such a wonderful music, you know, unique. Why not to have a unique name and just to be like ours, polyphonic? What's this polyphonic? You know?
Well, we don't
What's polyphony? I know, but the world doesn't know. What you know is not enough. Well, the whole world doesn't know this. Let me see, and this. I need glasses. And this mraval kmichmanova. Beautiful. Kmianova is.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
You can shorten a little bit because it's very long, you know.
Okay.
Make it as a real Georgian thing, you know. And everybody will, I think, is rather polyphonic, which is, honestly, you ask me, is the wrong term. In every sense, as the wrong term. First, because it comes from the, let's say, Latin academia, and in a different context. This was created for the classical music, not for traditional music. So, where, you know, all this system, Guido d'Arezzo, etc., 9 commas, and the interval of the second, etc., etc. So, when it's maybe 80 years ago, when it was first introduced into the, let's say, ethnomusicology, because it's a new science, it was ready this, and yes, let's take this polyphony or polyphonic, whatever, and then put traditional. This is safe, this is good now. But it's not, because polyphony in the Western, you know, terms is completely different thing. It's one voice, then the next voice starts, and then one pauses, and then third, and then this Lithuanian was very polyphonic, I found. Extreme, because it was counterpoint. And this is, you know, it was atypical. So let's not mix this, you know, this. I think it's quite important for Georgian music, in particular, to have its own name, because it deserves to have, you know, to be known, you know, by. And I can, well, I think it's enough, you know, but I'm trying to convince you, I would like to convince you why it's so important for Georgian multi-part singing to be on its own, just to feel that, you know, it is so independent and so ruling the world, why not, you know, and not polyphony like others, like polyphony, and it's the wrong term, you know, so many things are, you know, in this, anyway, enough time. I have some others, but I don't think it's the time everybody is, you know, maybe other people would like to ask other questions. But, yeah.
You know, I would add there one aspect that was mentioned by you roughly. It's what people themselves think about this music and what kind of terminology or what do they think about it. Because we often in musicology try to find out what is the native terminology for this or that phenomenon. And here we come to a very strange thing. Well, I don't know if it's strange, but for me it's not strange, but we have plenty of musical theory, plenty of discussion of the scales and the augmented seconds and different types of the scales and etc. in monophonic music, monophonic professional classical music. You go to Iran, you go to China, you go to monophonic countries, ancient Greece, you have plenty of musical theory. You go to polyphonic traditions, you have almost no theory at all. It seems to me that it's the nature of polyphonic music. Polyphonic music is basically music for everyone. If we are a polyphonic culture, we sing all together. If it's our celebration today, we marry someone to someone, or just enjoying the good harvest, we will all sing together. That's the idea of polyphony. Now imagine what changes if we are a monophonic culture. If we are a monophonic culture, then if we have a celebration, we would have the best singer performing in front of everyone. And everyone listening to that best singer, and the best singer must be acknowledged as the best singer by the society. So, this best singer might not be the only pretendant for this title of the best singer. So there might be more than one, maybe two, maybe three. So these best singers try to do something extraordinary, try to develop tradition, try to make a virtuoso instrumental accompaniment, or try to create their knowledge of theory of their practice to attract students. So when we have a polyphonic tradition, we have everyone participating the same way, and mostly everyone is considered like in pygmies. They don't consider that anyone is singing better than others. They all can sing yodeling, complex yodeling tradition. But if you go to Iran, if you go to Kurdistan, you will see that they do have the idea of their best singers. And if they want to have a celebration, if they want to have a wedding, they would invite the best of the musicians. And if the king or the Shah would have a state musicians place in a palace, there will be a great competition between musicians to be appointed as their state music. So, by its idea itself, monophonic music proposes plenty of theoretical explanation, plenty of terms about different elements of musical practice. And polyphonic music has very little of that.
Can I add something? Why we say monophonic and polyphonic? What about heterophonic, which is really most of the material today that was present, or yesterday or during this day? They were heterophonic and not polyphonic. This is the thing. Based always on this Latin or Western term, which is polyphony and with heterophony. No, this is the thing. That's why this is a cacophony of terms. Because heterophony would be much better if the voices are like this, going together or with something. So this is heterophony. It's not polyphony. Always according to the basic origin of the term, and this is, so it's much better multi-part, two-part, three-part, with the e-song. This is also important, There are several details which make this sound a little bit cacophonic, this polyphony. I would prefer, as I said, So heterophony is much closer to the most materials.
Well, here we go to another very important term for musicology. It's heterophony. And it depends what we call heterophony. out from the examples that I played, I don't think I consider any of them heterophony. Was Nuristan singing for you heterophony? Was Lithuania singing for you?
No, Lithuania was...
What about Nuristan singing?
Yes, but in Belarus, in Ukraine...
Oh yeah, well, that's different. Mr. Kocho mentioned this is from the example that we're listening to. Because heterophony is basically, to my understanding, it's when the people, it seems to them that they are singing in one part, and they are singing basically the same melody or same structural thing, but with different variations. And heterophony is very widely spread in East Europe, so in the border of West Asia and East Europe, and among Russia and Ukraine and Belarus and some other regions there. It's a very clear case of the, we can call it variant heterophony. Now, it seems to me that heterophony is a later phenomenon by itself. At least I suggested that if you have a look at the distribution of heterophony in Eastern Europe, where it's dominating, we have such a clear picture. Almost everywhere in Eastern Europe you can find that it's one big blanket of heterophony over the whole Eastern Europe region. And then you have there some localized corners or islands of drone polyphony or something different happening there. And if you follow the well-known rule of the geographic distribution and the historical stratigraphy, you have to acknowledge that the drone polyphony was their earlier phenomenon, which survived in several isolated regions, like in Kursk, Bryansk, Polessia, in Mordova, different places. And heterophony is something later, probably formed by the mixture of European population and East Asian population. So, for me, heterophony is a very specific phenomenon. I don't call heterophony a polyphony. I think it's something in between. Heterophony is in between monophony and polyphony. And it seems to me that it was formed as a phenomenon as a result of mixture of polyphony and monophony. Well, you may not agree with that. I suggest you to read my special case I dedicated in my 2006 book about who asked the first question in that book, the case of heterophony. And I'm happy that at least some colleagues from Russia and Ukraine agree that possibly the drone polyphony is much earlier style of singing for this region than heterophony. But anyway, it's very important to have in mind the phenomenon of heterophony. How many of you would say that heterophony is polyphony?
No, there are two different things.
Yes, they are different things.
Yes.
How many of you would say that heterophony is monophony?
What I would say, some Georgian songs are heterophonic and some other Georgian songs are polyphonic.
Okay, so for you, if the song is not polyphonic, it's heterophonic.
No, I don't say that. I don't want to confuse with heterophony and polyphony. I would like to call it multi-part, many-voiced, polyphony, polyphonos,
yeah.
Which means, from Greek, then Latin, then Western, imposing, it's... Yeah.
You know why I asked? Because according to what we agree in Georgian musicology, that almost the only widely known form of singing that is not spread in Georgia is heterophony. So I would be very happy if you name us Georgian songs that you heard that you think that it's heterophony. Did you hear this song during the performance, concerts? Or
don't put me in such a difficult position now in front of all these Georgian people.
No,
I would say goodbye tomorrow morning, in a very friendly way, and say thank you. It was very nice in Georgia. Not really to leave such a...
Oh, no. Don't worry. To say that there is heterophony in Georgia, there is nothing wrong, and we won't be offended at all. It's just that it depends. It's profoundly important for us to find out what different scholars consider heterophony.
Heterophony is not polyphony.
Which one?
There are two terms. There are more than two terms, in fact. But let's focus on these two terms.
Yes.
Polyphony means that where it depends on the voices. Yeah. This is, counterpoint. So, point against point. Yes. Heterophony, as you described, is all voices 1, 2, 3, 4. That's moving same way with some variations. Yes.
Same melody and variation.
Not the same melody, there are different voices. Same harmony maybe, but not the same melody.
Same melody.
Well, the first voice should have the melody, and then other voice, the second, third, and maybe fourth should be, harmonized. But they move horizontally. Polyphony doesn't move horizontally. It moves horizontally and vertically. This again, this is the main difference, I would say. Between this.
Okay, now I understood that.
But in order to avoid these two things, polyphony and homophony, would be multipart. As I can't remember this in Georgian. This, how do you say it? Yes. Use this word, fantastic word to use. Why not? And let the world learn about this word, and because this is the cradle of polyphony, may I say now, and and it's a beautiful term to use.
Well, thank you very much. I realize now that for you, swan singing would be heterophony, case of heterophony.
I think so.
Okay. Now,
don't take it.
No. It's important to know, because in the classical understanding, heterophony is one melody sang with variations. In swan songs, we have 3 functionally different voices singing all the time on their part. Yes, please.
I think it's interesting that Enno and you, Joseph, have, it seems, opposite ideological interpretations or connotations for polyphony, and Enno associates it with a learned tradition of counterpoint, and you associate it with tradition and group activity, and in particular, you spoke about the relative absence of theoretical activity connected with that. I cannot really agree with that if you consider that, like Enno was saying, counterpoint as a form of polyphony is highly theorized, and even traditional. What happened? There I am. So, because of these opposite interpretations of the connotations of the term, I think it's just important to keep an eye on objective criteria for making the categorizations, and make that prior to the terminological determinations. And just to add a defense of Enno's suggestion that it's possible to have a unique category for Georgian multi-part singing or polyphony, however you want to come down on that. The situation is perhaps analogous with language families, where there's a unique language family for Georgian languages. And so the problem with that, it's based on objective criteria for the classification of families. And we shouldn't feel the need, similarly with different forms of music, to have them all conform to a certain set number of categories just in order to have them grouped together by different ideological preferences.
Thank you.
უფრო კონკრეტული რომ გავხადოთ დავუშვათ აქ ჰეტეროფონიაზეა საუბარი. ჩემი აზრით კარგია რომ შევავიწროვოთ ეს ჩვენი აქცენტი და განვიხილოთ დავუშვათ ასეთ საკითხი. არის თუ არა ჰეტეროფონიის გამოვლინება პარალელური მრავალხმიანობა, იგი ორგანული. თუ ეს არის ფუნქციონალური მრავალხმიანობა, თუ არის ჰეტეროფონია. იმიტომ რომ ბევრი მეცნიერი არის როგორც ბატონი ემოსავით ქართულ პოლიფონიას მათ შორის ჩეკანოვსკა, ანა ჩეკანოვსკა ქართულ პოლიფონიას მიიჩნევს როგორც ჰეტეროფონიას. არის ეგეთ მოსაზრება. ხო, აი პარალელური არის თუ არა პარალელური მოძრაობა ხმებისა ჰეტეროფონია. აი თუნდაც ეს საკითხი. დღესაც მე მგონი მწვავედი გას, სხვა აზრია ამ საკითხს.
მე მგონი ამის შესახებ უფრო ადრე იყო შეიძლება ლაპარაკი, რომ ბოლო პერიოდში მაინც ასეთ რისე და მუსიკოლოგებმა მაინც დაიწყო შეთანხმება იმაზე, რომ მართალია დომინანტია რომ ტრადიციულ ოპაში შეიძლება ტერმინი მრავალხმიანობა, ანუ პოლიფონია, რომელიც ინგლისურად ითარგმნა იყოს დაგებული არა როგორც ვიწრო დასავლური ევროპული პოლიფონია, არამედ საერთოდ მრავალხმიანობა. ასევე ჰეტეროფონიას უფრო საერთოდ ტერმინის გაგება რაც უფრო დასუსტება და დაუწოდო მით უკეთესი არის. და ასევე ჰეტეროფონიას ჩვენ შეგვიძლია მაშინ ნებისმიერი ერთ-ერთი ხმალწრო იყოს მაგალითად დამოკიდებული, ესე იგი შეიძლება მაშინ ჰეტეროფონია ჩართოთ იგივე გურული ნატური, სადაც ბანი არის და ერთ-ერთი ხმალი მაშინ ესე იგი შეიძლება ჰეტეროფონიის კატეგორიაში გადავიდეთ და დამოკიდებელი ხმა არ არის ის, ხო? ამ შემთხვევაში თამას მე მახსენდება პირადად ჩემი კლასიფიკაცია, როდესაც მრავალხმიანობის სხვადასხვა კრიტერიუმებად ერთ-ერთი მთავარი კრიტერიუმი იყო ბანი რას აკეთებდა ისა. მეორე კიდე თუ როგორ ხდებოდა მათი სხვადასხვა ფორმების სინთეზი ერთმანეთში.
მე ჩემი აზრი აქვს ამ ამაზე უბრალოდ სხვადასხვა კიდე არსებობს და იმიტომა საუბარი, იმიტომ მიდოდა.
კი ბატონო, გასაგებია, სხვადასხვა აზრი არსებობს, მაგრამ
არა, ამის შესახებ ინტერესი არ აქვს.
არა, მე ვფიქრობ, რომ არის. What I wanted to tell that Tamas Gavisonian himself had a very interesting classification of Georgian multi-part or polyphonic forms, and he showed very interestingly that the crucial element, we may discuss this also, crucial element is in the multi-part structure, in multi-part texture, what the bass is doing. Because when the bass is a drone, it turns everything into a drone, multi-part thingy, polyphony, whatever you call it. It's a drone. If the bass is it turns everything into ostinato. When the bass is free, etc., then it turns everything into a free polyphony or polyphony in Western understanding. So we can have a.
There is other wonderful criteria.
Yes, there are other criteria, but to me this seems possibly the most important, because when you have a texture, polyphonic texture, and in polyphonic texture, in most of the traditional polyphonic tradition, in polyphonic traditions, most of the parts are sung by individual voices, and one of the parts is sung by a group of voices. This group of voices is usually singing the bass. So that's the most stable, most unmoved, most slow to develop part. And this part tells us what is the strategically what form of polyphony it is. This can be not only on the bottom of the texture. For instance, in Nuristan, or both in male and female traditions in Nuristan, drone is in the middle. But still it's a bass, it's a drone, and it turns into a polyphonic but drone type of music. So that's why I called it drone dissonance or drone secondal polyphony, you can call it. So what I would suggest to discuss now probably will be this. What do you think about this principle of making bass as the central element of labeling the various polyphonic textures? Do you think it's correct, or do you think it has some adverse effects?
I think it's correct. I can't find any problem.
I don't find any problem with terminological distinction, because if all we are musicians clearly we can distinguish what is monophony, what is heterophony, like Tamat said, parallel movement, strictly parallel, and what is multiple voice. I can find difficulties. I think you are speaking okay with these distinctions on the voice that is making the bass part. The bass part means that determines the album.
Yes, I wanted everyone to look through the material so what they know and look there. Okay, where is the bass there? Okay, the bass is this. What is the principle of bass? Is it a drone? Is it ostinato? Is it a free movement? And what we can say about the whole texture, the whole polyphonic texture. Anybody says that actually yes, bass makes up the big part of what we call this polyphonic texture. That would be interesting for me to hear. Or you say that no, the bass is here drone, but we can't say that it's a drone polyphony. And if this is so, then why we can't say this?
That I try to say is I find useful these distinctions you are proposing. And I don't find illogical contradiction. I can understand you, and I can understand Tamas when you speak of parallel, and I can understand Eno.
Now, also, if we come back for a minute to the parallel polyphony, and if we think that the exact following the same intervals makes it heterophony. Okay, in Boolean chants, we have such a long sequence of 5 ninth chords moving in parallel movements. Can you say that this is a heterophony?
Rashi.
That's Guru Sakalopleshi did it in Mandose, parallel pingana gordek
მევროთ იმ ბანთან დაკავშირებით მაინც და მაინც ვერ დაგეთანხმებით. იმიტომ რომ ესეთი უნივერსალური კრიტერიუმი ეს ვერ არის. იმიტომ რომ სხვადასხვა მუსიკალურ კულტურაში ქართულთან მიმართებაში, ქართულ მუსიკალურ ეს შეიძლება ამართლებს თავის ფუნქციას, მაგრამ ამას ვერ გადავიდანთ იმ ტაივანურ მუსიკაზე, ვერ გადავიდანთ თუნდაც სუტარდინესზე, სად არის ბანი, ხო? ხო, არ არის ბანი. ამიტომ ეს მრავალხმიანობას ვერ დავარქმევთ მას. ხო, და ამდენად უნივერსალური არ არის ეს ბანი განსაზღვრა მრავალხმიანობის ამ მხოლოდ. ეს შეიძლება ერთ-ერთი კრიტერიუმი იყოს, მაგრამ არა ერთადერთი.
ძალიან კარგი. სწორი არის, იმიტომ რომ მართლაც აფრიკულ მუსიკაში ძალიან ბანი როგორც ესეთი ფაქტორად არ აქვს. არის შედარებით დაბალი ხომალობრივი თქმა, მაგრამ ეს ბანის ფუნქციას მაინც ვერ იღებს, იმიტომ რომ ბანის ფუნქცია მაინც ცოტა სხვა რამეს ნიშნავს.
And what about traditions in which drone is not in bass part, but for example, Moldavia, Seto, Estonia, other?
So that's the case exactly. So I'm asking that if the drone is somewhere on the top, can you say that it's a drone polyphony, or this is a synthetic one? For instance, as I mentioned, in Naduri songs we do have a drone. Mrgbali is a drone. For a long time, oh, it's staying there. But other part, second part is oh, the minus of stereo part, then bass hey, and because this drone is in the top or in the middle, it's kind of getting lost. It does not become as important. Or probably we are wrong. Possibly we need to make it as a drone type of polyphony. Well, Tamás, I think, proposed a good solution. He proposed a synthetic form, so when the form has several elements of different types of polyphony. And in Naduri we do have we do have a texture when we have a pedal drone, oh, and we can even have a rhythmic drone. Oh, second from each other. So we have a pedal drone, we have a rhythmic drone. Then we can have a ostinato, so which is yodeling, and at the same time the bass moves freely. So we have like 4 different principles of moving. Each voice moves on its unique, independent way. We have pedal drone, we have a rhythmic drone, we have ostinato, we have a free movement. What the hell is this? So, Tamás proposed, I think, correctly that this is a synthetic form of polyphony, which is probably the highest and the most complex form of polyphony when you have different types of different voices using different types of different principles. You know, yes, please.
All these principles which you have, all the principles which you have discussed are melodic principles. How about harmonic principles?
Oh, harmonic principles are my favorite part of discussion. You know, if you look at what happens in this song, in the Naduri song, when you have a drone, pedal drone, rhythmic drone, free movement, and the ostinato, you have a very interesting distribution. So each of the voices is developing according to the 3rd or 5th principle. So.
I didn't ask for the explanation, but how about using them for classification?
Well, this is then we are going to the different that we discussed earlier. It's a secondal or 3rd, so dissonant or consonant. So when we are talking about their coordination with each other, that's when we are going in, where we are leaving the melodic movements behind, and we are going into the coordination, of the harmonic coordination. So, in this case, in Naduri songs, of course, coordination, vertical coordination, is the central, is their dissonant. So we have there 3 parts, actually, all 4 parts have their axis, and you have something like this, G, C, D, G chord, which is in the center of it is a dissonant element, or secondal element, let's say so, because I agree with you that dissonant, because of its connotations, probably is not good to use. So, and that middle part, when it's goes la 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 la, it still changes itself into 3rd. So dissonant goes into another dissonant.
Yeah, so what I would like to suggest is not just to base a classification only on a melodic principle, but when you think about a general classification, then you have to include, I think, the harmonic structure as well.
Of course, yes. So, in the terms, when we have a principle of parallel polyphony, you can't have parallel polyphony only in vertical coordination. It's a melodic coordination of both of them, both of the melodies following each other. In some principles, for instance, it's a dissonant, the secondal or 3rd polyphony. You can see just listening to the certain chord from there, you can see that, okay, that's based on 2nd. But to say more about that, you need to have a look at the melodic development of each voice and coordination. So, in a way, polyphonic music is much more complex than to look at it from one point of view. You know, I sometimes explain to my students that why the traditional polyphony is so complex. I tell them that, okay, when J.S. Bach was writing his compositions, he was using his own one brain to compose the music. So he would take the melody, and then he introduced the same melody in another part, and then another part. So he was, all his music, all his extremely complex polyphonic structure comes out from one brain. So it's like one general which has staff that he can order exactly what to do there. And when you have a traditional polyphonic example, you have 3 or 4 different creative people, and they are creating the structure all together. That's I call it polybrain way of composing music. So you have different personalities when they want to put their own personality in the song. That's why if you compare different parts in Georgian polyphonic song, what they are doing very often in polyphonic song, you find out that they are doing completely different things. They are saying different words. They are using different rhythms. Even if I tell you that, okay, which part is this? Hey, do, hey, do, hey, do, hey. Everyone knows that's a bass. Even if I sing it very high, it will be still bass. But if I say la 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 la, everyone knows that it's on the middle part. Or if I say la 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 la, that's the top part. Everyone knows. So the different parts have their vocabulary, and different people, different creative people, have their own things what to do there. So that's why Georgian polyphony is sometimes described as a contrastive polyphony. Of course, it's different from the J.S. Bach's contrastive polyphony, because contrastive there is named because Bach is using not one thing but more than one thing. But here in Georgian polyphony, you have as many things or as many different ways of development as any performance you have there.
I'd like to propose you to sing one Sutartina, which will be like example of complex and mixed form. Okay?
Yes.
One group starts from this part.
Tevai rugi bir, tevai rugi bir, tevai rugi bir, tevai rugi bir. My shasir rugi bir, my shasir rugi bir, my shasir rugi bir, my shasir rugi bir. And third part. Kat hier teir bir, kat hier teir bir, kat here teir bir, kat here teir bir. And start first, then second and third all together, and I will make 4. Tevai rugi bir, tevai rugi bir, tevai rugi bir.
Which kind what can you say about?
Polydissonant.
Ostinato, brown, second, all mixed, different styles.
Well, this was a canon.
I think you can draw a contrast between polyphony that is a melody harmonized and polyphony that is made of separate things put together.
Oh yes, of
So
course.
a melodic polyphony or a harmonic polyphony.
Yes, of course. It's well, in traditional music you can very rarely have a real harmonized melody unless it's a late European influence. In earlier traditions, you mostly have more equal polyphonic texture. I even suggested once in Tbilisi there was a conference many years ago, probably about 30 or 40 years ago, and I suggested that Georgian traditional songs, most complete Georgian traditional songs, are not based around melodies. You know, because it's basically known that melody is the soul of the music. And suddenly, the young band, Joseph Jorlania, comes out and says that Georgian songs are not based around because they have no melodies. And it was like that I was saying that Georgian music have no soul. So I offended many of my colleagues, and I remember Anzur Kapsade saying that he was enraged. And then I asked him that, can you sing me a melody of Çakırlı or Hasan Begura? And he could not, because They are not based around melodies. All three parts are showing the soul of the music. It's the harmonic togetherness creates the music. If you say the in all table songs, these things happen. Okay, so it's a Hasabegura melody. No, it's only bass part. Some other things happening in Hasabegura there. So you can't say that Hasabegura has a melody. Hasabegura is a creation. It's like a contemporary musical composition, in which the composers try to not to follow this pattern that you have a melody and harmonizing different ways of harmonizing it. The same is happening in many traditional songs. Okay, now we need to come to the conclusion. As usual, when you start discussing things, it's by the end very often you are more divided than at the beginning. But I hope that we can say that there were some very interesting and important comments. First of all, we should try to avoid using the term dissonant. That was very important for me to hear. So that second or third polyphony or coordination of voices will be much better to use than dissonant or consonant, because dissonant and consonant, they do have a very judgmental values attached to it, even if we try to free them from it. Then it was discussed that yes, bass can be a very important element of the classification of polyphony, but what can we do in the traditions when there is no bass at all? There are such traditions, and in such traditions we cannot use this principle by the simple fact that there is no bass. Also, if a drone or ostinato or different principles, they are all together present in one song, what we can say. And I propose that Thomas' suggestion from many years ago, it was his diploma and then became his dissertation, and I think it was very important idea that the most complex Georgian traditional songs are synthetic forms, so that they use several different principles of polyphony. And you can say that, for instance, if you look from this point of view, even on Nuristani songs, you have a drone in the middle, and you have other parts jumping around in a canonic way. They are using a canonic polyphony. Gide არის? Სურვილი?
ბატონი ერნიკოჩის შემოთავაზებასთან დაკავშირებით მივეჩერებო. მან შემოთავაზა, რომ ესე იგი ქართული რაოდენობის განსხვავებულია ყოველდღიურ განსხვავებულს და ერთმანეთს დასაკუთრებული სახელი. მე სამწუხაროდ არ დავიწყე შეიმოსწრებული, რომ შუა საუკუნეების ტერმინოლოგიაზეა საუბარი. ეს არის მე-11 საუკუნის ზულება ჩვენი ფილოსოფოსის. რომელსაც განათლება მიიღო და საბანაჭრე გადაიცნობდა ერთი კანტატის მუსიკალურს, მეყოლთან ჩამოვიდა რა და ესე იგი შეიქმნა ქართული ტერმინოლოგია, სადაც გამახიანება სამ ტერმინს შეუქმნა, ადასტაბილაკია ესე იგი მუსიკალური ქსოვილს ადაპტებს. ჩვენ გავურავალდიან სიმღერებს და ის ჰარმონიაზეც კი, რომელიც აღიარებული კატეგორიაა მსოფლიოში ანტიკურში, ჰარმონიის განსხვავებული კალიტა აქვს, მაგას და მორთულს უწოდებს, სადაც თავის ტერმინებს უქმნის. ჰარმონიასაც ქართულს შეუძლებს მორთულს, რომელიც ნიშნავს, როგორ ვთქვათ, აი მუსიკაში თვას, მუსიკალური ქსოვილის შექმნას. თითოეულ ხმას თავის განსაკუთრებულ სადაც აკეთებს და ჩვენ გავახსენებთ უწოდებს ერთობაი შეყოლების არის, ანუ ესე იგი ერთად თული, ყოველად თული ერთობას, ერთად ფუნქციას ძალაპიანობას უწოდებს. ანუ ეს ტერმინები ის რომ განსხვავებული იყო ჩვენი ძალაპიანობა, მე-11 საუკუნეში უკვე საქმული იყო. ჩვენი კისნასკოლები და ან ფილოსოფიის მიერ და მან ეს ტერმინები შეიქმნა დავიტოვო. სამწუხაროდ ეს ამას დასვიდა და ამას გავცოდა მე, იმიტომ რომ შესაძლებელი საკმაოდ ისტორიული პირობები მოყვა ამას და თანაც როგორც ცნობილია, როდესაც ერთი ლიტერატურის სკოლის თვის გამათა წერისად ერთი პიროვნება, როცა არარატული გამოსვაში კი ვიზიტება ენის ლექსიკაში, ხალხის ლექსიკაში, ამიტომ აღარ დავწერთ ჩვენი ტერმინები სამწუხაროდ. მაგრამ დავაჩინია. ეს არის მორთული გაზიარებს ჰარმონიას, იმიტომ რომ მას განსხვავებულად ესმოდა ჰარმონია. და ჩვენ გავახსენებთ უბრალოდ ერთობარი შეყოლების არის, ანუ მოხდეთ გავახნიან.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, I think we need to come to the conclusions. I don't know if we convince each other in one point or another point, but discussions usually do not aim into coming to a general agreement. Discussion is at the best is to have the different parts expressing what they think of the phenomenon. And probably the best that we can achieve that in our participants, including myself and my colleagues, to have one or two doubts that possibly what we believe in is not correct, that we need possibly to take into account what other colleagues think about that. Tyler, what would you say?
Very tired. I think all people are tired.
Okay. So thanks to everyone for fruitful discussion and for your points, very important points made here. And we can say, Ruslan, do you want to add something?
Yes, of course.
Huh? All right, please.
არა მხოლოდ დაივასოს ხდება თავი, არამედ თვითონ ჩვენთანაც ყველანი ვარ ძალიან დაღლილები. ამიტომ ეს ამ შეგაცდით უბრალოდ ვიტყვი რომ ჩემი აზრით კარგი სიმპოზიუმი გქონდა. თუ თქვენ რაიმე შენიშვნები გააქვთ, რაიმე ისე გაქვთ სურვილები გაქვთ, შეგიძლიათ მოგწეროთ, გაგვიზიაროთ თქვენი დამოკიდებულება და შემდეგისთვის შეძლებს დაგვარად. გავითვალისწინებთ, იცით რა ჩვენ ვხვდებით ხოლმე, ხანდახან როცა კარგად არ არის რაღაც, მაგრამ უნდა ვახასიათოთ, რომ ძალიან პატარა ადამიანური რესურსები გვაქვს. პრაქტიკულად 4 ადამიანი ვართ ჩართული ამ სიმპოზიუმის კეთებაში და ბოლო დღეებში გვეხმარებიან მხოლოდ ერთი კვირის განმავლობაში გვეხმარება ის ხალხი, ვინც ტრიალებს ახლა აქ. ასე რომ დიდი მადლობა ჩამოგზავნებისთვის. მე ვისურვებდი რომ ბევრი თქვენთაგანი ისევ მენახა ჩვენ სიმპოზიუმზე და გაგვეგზელები და მეგობრობა. ძალიან დიდი მადლობა.
შეიძლება ითქვას, რომ ჩვენი სიმპოზიუმის მუშაობა დამთავრებულია და სავალდებულებით საღამოს შეგრძნებს კონცერტი.
ესე იგი სასტუმროში მიგზავნებით, სადაც გეკნებათ
იქნებიან ეს უნდა რაღაცას თქვა.
მასაძე ახლა მასაძე შევხვდებით სტაილის მცირეს. იმატონი. აი, ეს რაღაცის თქვა. Ja.
არა, იქნებიან ეს ხო.
არ ვიცი, მე მგონი ისეთი დაღლილები არიან, რომ ხა არ აქვს არაფრის თქმის საშუალება. ყველამ გამოხატა სიმპოზიუმის პირველობის მანძილზე თავისი დამოკიდებულება. ყველამ აბსოლუტურად მოგვეფერა ყველამ გითხრა კეთილი სიტყვები. ასე რომ გამეორება არაფრის საჭირო არ არის. მე ვფიქრობ, ხა არ ვაიძულოთ და ესენი კიდევ ვილაპარაკოთ ამაზე და მადლობები ვიხადოთ. დიდი მადლობა.
Thank you.